Welcome to Counterpunch with Trevor Loudon. Please like the show, share the show, subscribe to Counterpunch, subscribe to Epoch TV. You're going to see more information about the communist worldwide revolution and how to fight it than you'll see anywhere else. Today, I'm a very proud man. It's taken over 3 years, but we've finally launched our full-length documentary, Enemies Within the Church. It's been a struggle. I've worked with Kerry Gordon, the pastor from Sioux City, Iowa, my good friend Judd Saul, who produced my 2016 documentary, Enemies Within, which looked at the Marxist and Islamist infiltration of the US Congress and Senate, John Harris, and several other people to put together something I think is pretty darn special. Enemies Within the Church, I believe, will be the most shocking thing that most Christians and non-Christians will have seen for many, many years. It is produced with the idea in mind that only truth can save us now. We've got to stop sugarcoating things. We've got to say it like it is. And American Christianity is in huge trouble. And unless this is exposed and counters, it's going to take down the culture and the country. You know, the big problem with American Christianity for many years has been pietism, and that is the concept that Christians should not get involved in what they would call politics. The roots of this false pietist movement went back to Germany just after the Reformation. After the Reformation, the Protestants broke away from the Catholic Church. They had a new energy. They wanted to get involved in everything, to spread Christianity into every corner of the globe and every area of their lives, their business, their cultural lives, their artistic lives, their political lives, everything. This movement swept Germany and it went into Scandinavia, but there was a counter movement, the pietist movement. And this said, no, Christians should not be involved in all these areas. Christians should stay in their churches, stay in their communities, be very observant, pious Christians, but have nothing to do with politics or culture or anything of that nature. And this movement was very popular. It was funded by some of the main princes of Europe, King Frederick of Prussia, for instance. They started putting pietists into university positions. They started promoting pietism. These kings and princes did not want these pesky Christians involved in politics. That was diluting their power. They had to put a stop to it. So the Scandinavian countries and Germany became very pietistic. The Christians didn't get involved in civic affairs. Now that created a vacuum. It's no accident that communism started in Germany. Karl Marx, his followers tried to start a communist revolution in 1848. They almost succeeded because there wasn't a strong Christian opposition to their movement. The princes and kings had to suppress it. As thousands of German communists moved to America, to the Midwest, to Milwaukee, Chicago, Minneapolis. And they set up socialist towns, they set up a socialist movement because Scandinavian and German pietists had settled the Midwest ahead of them. And so they were finding the communists found the same pietist movement that enabled them to come to power in Germany, in the Midwest. They set up the American Communist Party in Chicago. It was decided very early on by the worldwide communist movement, and it was in existence well before the Bolshevik Revolution, that American Christianity, Western Christianity, had to be a major target. The very first communist front in America was set up years before the Bolshevik Revolution. It was the Methodist Committee for Social Action. The communists in the 1920s told their people, if you're brought up Catholic, go back into the Catholic Church. You're brought up Baptist, go to the Baptist Church. If you're brought up Episcopalian, go back to the Episcopalian Church. Not to help and learn from Christianity, simply to be able to use the influence of the churches to promote socialism. Because the churches had what the communists lacked. They had money, they had influence, and they had respectability. So they went into the churches to spread communism. And they found because so many American Christians were pietists, they were suckers for this. Many Protestant clergymen signed up for Communist Party fronts in the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s. They set up the National Council of Churches, which affiliated to the World Council of Churches, which was run by the Soviet KGB. This sparked a counter movement as more and more Christians moved into the evangelical movement, and the evangelical movement spread. the left-wingers in the Christian movement decided to infiltrate the evangelicals. In the 1970s, you had Jim Wallace, the former SDS Marxist from Sojourners. You had Ron Sider. You had Richard Mao, another SDS member. They all got together. They founded a movement called the Chicago Declaration, which called for social justice, all the left-wing talking points. But it didn't really fire, it didn't really capture the imagination of American Christianity. What did capture the imagination of American Christianity was the moral majority, the Reagan movement of the 1980s. Falwell and Pat Robertson, they moved the American evangelicals even further into supporting conservatism, supporting Ronald Reagan, supporting Israel. They really moved them into an anti-communist direction. And so meanwhile, the left-wing evangelicals had to start going into the Bible colleges. Most of the Bible colleges and seminaries in this country are run by Marxists. And they are promoting this woke brand of Christianity, this critical race theory, which is just Marxism applied to race rather than class. They're all about ending white privilege, social justice, welcoming illegal immigrants across the border. All of these Marxist programs they are supporting. So you've got to the point now, if you send your son or daughter to one of these places, they will almost certainly turn out to be a Marxist, not a traditional Orthodox Christian. And so there were secondary results from this too, it started to affect the politics too. The young pastors who once would have supported Reagan and Israel were anti-communists are now coming out supporting Bernie Sanders and Palestine and socialism. And this is infiltrating the churches, infiltrating the Southern Baptists, the evangelicals, and a lot of secondary organizations. A lot of American Christians, they went through Campus Crusade for Christ, for instance, when they're in college. They donated to World Vision. They might have been in InterVarsity. All of these organizations, World Vision, which was a very anti-communist, genuine Christian charity, is now woke. It's now Marxist. InterVarsity is now Marxist. Cru, Campus Crusade for Christ, once one of the most vibrant student Christian organizations on the planet, is now fully woke. It's all about critical race theory. It's all about social justice. So this has had political effects too. It was the evangelicals who supported Ronald Reagan. It was the evangelicals who supported Donald Trump. You think this might have upset the communist movement, the leftists in the church? All this work, they've taken over Hollywood, they've taken over the media, the Democratic Party, the unions, they've taken over big tech, they've infiltrated the universities. They've got virtually everything under their control, but they don't have the darn evangelicals and they don't have the Baptists. And these crazy people go out and elect the Ronald Reagans and Donald Trumps and set them back 10, 15, 20 years in their movement. So beginning in the early 2000s, there was another attempt to bring the left into the evangelical movement. And one of the main culprits here is a man called Tim Keller of New York. Tim Keller set up the Gospel Coalition. He brought in some conservatives, he brought in some Marxists, and they have worked with the Ethics and Religious Commission of the Southern Baptists, the most conservative, Orthodox Bible-believing denomination in the country, the largest Protestant denomination in the country. The Southern Baptists adopted critical race theory as part of their church toolbox for dealing with racism. Critical race theory was started by bona fide American communists, promoted through people like J.D. Greer, the president of the Southern Baptists, by Al Mohler, the leaders of the Southern Baptist movement. These people are either turning a blind eye or consciously enabling the Marxist takeover of the Baptist seminaries and the Baptist institutions. So please, if you care about this country, if you care about your faith, if you have no faith, but if you just want to live free, get this movie. It will shock you, it will reorientate you, it will challenge you philosophically, it will challenge you theologically, it will challenge you to look at the reality of the world we're in today. It's in a pretty darn sad state. Andrew Breitbart, great journalist, you always used to say politics was downstream from culture. The culture shapes the politics. Well, he could have added that your culture is downstream from religion. So the religion shapes the culture shapes the politics. If your politics are a mess and your culture is a sewer, what's that telling you about your churches? So if you want to change your politics and you want to restore your culture, you have to reorientate your religion. That's how it works. So please get the movie. Take it to your church. Get your friends around to watch it. Get your pastor to see it. It'll be a great litmus test whether he is a man of God or he's just a weak guy doing an easy job till he retires. It'll be a real test. So if you want to see the movie, go to enemieswithinthechurch.com. You can order a hard copy DVD or multiple DVDs, or you can download pay-per-view and watch the movie on your computer or on TV. I'm super proud of this. This is going to be one of the most controversial documentaries ever released in any subject, I believe, because it's so uncompromising in what it says. Steve Deace, the famous conservative commentator from Iowa, saw the movie and talked about how his jaw dropped all the way through it. He said there are no sacred cows in this movie, none whatsoever. So if you've got a weak stomach, you might have to watch it in short bursts, but it's worth watching for everybody. So please go to enemieswithinthechurch.com. It will be an experience, I can promise you that. So thanks for watching. Please like the show, subscribe to the show, subscribe to Epoch TV. I want to see you again for future episodes. I'd love to hear your feedback about the movie. Put it in the comment section. I'd really like to know what you think of it. And we'll see you next time round. God bless America and God bless everybody who loves freedom. Thank you.